Welcome back. I'm Amy Sweezy for NBAA TV. With all of our talk this week about sustainability, we turn our attention again to sustainable aviation fuel. Now, one of the companies that produces sustainable aviation fuel, having a hard time spitting that out, is World Energy. And with me now is World Energy CEO Gene Gebolys. Gene, thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
All right, so hopefully you can say the word sustainable a little more clear than I can.
I'll give it a shot, yeah.
All right, so let's just start with the basics. First of all, what is sustainable aviation fuel?
So sustainable aviation fuel is kind of a catch-all phrase for fuels that are grown above the terra firma, the fuels that don't come from fossil sources.
Okay.
So primarily our sources are vegetable oils, fats and greases, and used cooking oils, that kind of thing. So these are all sourced from grown materials that are sustainable because as they grow, they take CO2 out of the environment, and as they get consumed, they put it back in. But it's a cycle that happens above the ground.
Okay, and that's different from traditional fuel. In what way?
Yeah. In short, what you've got is photosynthesis in fossil fuels happened millions of years ago, right? And then those fossils get pushed down underneath the layers and layers and layers of Earth, and then eventually get pulled back up, refined, and made into road fuels, aviation fuels, the rest. These are fuels that also come from photosynthesis. It just comes from current photosynthesis. And that's why it's renewable, right? So we're not taking carbon that's been already sequestered in the Earth and pulling it back up. We're taking carbon that's being circulated above the Earth.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So then, what would you say is the biggest benefit, or what are some of the other benefits then to using sustainable fuel?
So they've got a lot of benefits. The biggest benefit is they're dramatically lower in carbon intensity. And so as the world is grappling with how are we going to address the climate challenge, the number one challenge facing the species, how are we going to do that? Well, we need to leave more sequestered oil in the ground and make more of our fuel from above ground.
Okay.
And so their number one benefit is carbon reduction. But they have a lot more benefits than just that. Very importantly, they reduce localized air emissions as well. So they're better out of the tailpipe, they're better atmospherically, they're better generally.
Okay, so let's talk about cost, because I think, it always comes down to money, right? Is it expensive?
So this really comes down to how we value carbon reduction. If the question is, can you give me a better fuel at a lower price? The answer is no. I can give you a better fuel that meets objectives, societal objectives, at a fair price on a carbon reduction basis. So we look at how much we're the incremental cost relative to other ways of reducing carbon. And it's quite effective when you look at it from that point of view. So yes, as a carbon reducing technology, it's very cost effective. Is it more? Is it less costly than its high carbon alternative? No, it's not.
Okay. So why is this so important that we transition to this?
So here at this conference, it's really the sweet spot for where this fuel can add most. So private business aviation is carrying the world's business leaders around, right? And for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is security reasons, they have no choice but really to fly in private business aviation. So these are the same leaders that are our most leading voices on carbon reduction, not on a whole host of societal issues. The world's leading business leaders have to have a safe place to lead from. And if they get criticized constantly for taking private aircraft to their environmental meetings, it creates a very tough dynamic. So frankly, some just choose not to lead because they don't want to seem hypocritical.
Right.
What we're doing with SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, I think I actually said it correctly.
Good job. Way better than me.
What we're doing with this fuel is creating a safe place to lead from.
I think that's fantastic. Now, you obviously your company is creating this fuel. What does the future production look like? Like, is it your goal to have a certain amount, or for there to be just 100% sustainable fuel?
Yeah, so what we have to do is keep more barrels of oil in the ground, right?
Okay.
Over time, you're going to see electrification cutting in more and more into the gasoline pool. You'll find a whole host of alternatives relative to marine shipping and in rail and over-the-road trucking over time. The toughest to mitigate sector is aviation. We're going to be running around on aviation fuel for a long time. So the importance of this is that we've got to make meaningful contributions into eliminating fossil aviation fuel, or pushing fossil aviation fuel aside in favor of lower carbon sustainable aviation fuel. It's going to take a while. We're in what I would call the vacuum tube stage of development, right? So
What's a while? 5 years? 10 years? Can you
no,
even
it's going
can you say?
it's to the point where we have pushed out every drop of aviation fuel. It's decades, but it's really critical that we capitalize on this jump that we've got now. There are only two commercial suppliers of sustainable aviation fuel in the world today. That's not an industry. There's got to be a lot more investment. We're investing heavily. Neste, the other major commercial player in this space, is investing heavily. Other new entrants are coming in from many directions into the space. So that investment is starting to happen, and it needs to happen throughout the supply chain, not only at the production level, but at the feedstock level, and all the way through the supply chain. But we're now at the very beginnings of doing what we need to do to go from, as I said, the vacuum tube stage of life, where we remember when, well, not when you, but when I was a kid, they were big.
Oh, I don't know. Me too.
Our TV sets were about 1,000 pounds.
Oh,
'Cause
right.
They were, you're right? Now we've got a situation in which information technology has gotten so advanced and so small and so cheap that we can have a person's thoughts move their artificial limb, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That happens not because we're operating at the vacuum tube level, but because we're operating at nanotechnology level. And so the innovation that needs to happen happens one step at a time. And we've already come a long way in even just the last 5 years. But we need to take one step after another until we get to the point that we're at the equivalent of a thought moving an arm.
Okay. You know, and actually, I spoke to a couple of the leaders from Neste yesterday, and they said they welcome competition. They want more companies. We need more people to do this.
I was talking to a couple of my colleagues from Neste today, and we were comparing notes about how important we are to each other.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you know, pioneers need partners.
Right. You can't do this all by yourself.
And so yeah, no, we absolutely see them as an instrumental part of the early stage movement in this industry, and of course it has to become something that more and more companies find to be in their interest to do. But
Right.
you know, it's interesting. General Motors came out with an electric car long before Tesla came out with an electric car. That went nowhere. Innovation requires the Teslas of the world to disrupt. But now, all car manufacturers are going heavy electric, right?
Right.
So it doesn't mean that we get to be the only player in the space. If our role is to disrupt and keep moving, that's a good thing. There's so much more to be done in this space than just building a plant and operating it, right? We've got to find more and more ways to innovate to drive down carbon intensity in each gallon that we sell, and we need to sell a lot more gallons, and that requires a lot of different players.
And you brought up partners. You know, what about your corporate partners? How do you kind of cooperate with them in order to foster this adoption of more sustainable fuel?
That's huge. So, you know, whether it's Amazon using our SAF, or United, who's been a partner with us from the get-go, World Fuel Services, who have been a partner from the early days. Without them, we don't get this done. You know, JetBlue is now flying on our fuel. We've got individuals like Bill Gates who fly on our fuel. These people are really critical to kind of taking the arrows in the early going, right? So the more we can build off of those pioneers helping us trudge the frontier, if you will, the better off it is for everybody. But those early adopters, super, super critical.
In closing, tell me about this conference. What do you love about it? Any takeaways or aha moments that you've seen? Any of the education sessions or the expo?
So the conference is fantastic. It's my first one of these.
Oh, okay.
And so I probably shouldn't have been my first one of these.
Now
but,
you're realizing how much you missed, right?
Right. No, but it's the absolute right crowd, in part because of what I was saying earlier, that this is a segment of the aviation industry that really needs us. And we really need them. This is a really symbiotic relationship because business leaders absolutely have to be, if they're not credible, they're nothing, right? And so if they're out of one side of their mouth, they're telling other companies what they need to do to get in line with where the world is heading. And on the other hand, they appear to not be heeding their own advice.
Right.
That's not great, right? It's not great for them. It's not great for anybody. So we need them to be stepping out in front. They need us to be supplying them so that they can be true to their word. And so it's a really good symbiotic relationship. So I'm thrilled to be here, and it's been a really great event so far.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you talking with us here today. Gene Gebolys, CEO of World Energy. Thank you so much for watching NBAA TV.
Fantastic. Great to be here.